Or when they do get together, say for lunch, they don't know what to talk about. I mean, the people from two different worlds. And I don't know if you noticed, but if you ask a child, how are things going? The child's going to say, fine. And the conversation could be over, right? The child's not going to say, oh, I just failed a test in science, and the kids are picking on me, and I don't know if I can get to school anymore because I don't have any more bus money. They're not going to start a conversation with a strange adult that way. And so that's another reason why I think the mentoring programs fade. And then also, one needs outside support to do a mentoring program. What happens if you're sitting down with a child and he says, I don't have a good winter coat? Or my shoes have holes in them. And as the mentor, all by yourself, you don't know how to solve these problems. We're about to become homeless. And so the best mentoring program is one done in a context where all these other support services one can ask for and not just be alone. So I think that's one reason why the mentoring program I developed has had a better chance. Okay, what were our effects? After I worked with these kids as hard as I could and with my trial and error over 2+ years, and all this time I had this other list of kids who hadn't won the coin toss, that I could go back and look at their records and find out what happened to them. What did I find? I found that we did increase attendance above what was expected. We increased grades above what was expected. We increased positive views of school. Like, one thing we found out is when kids, by the way, my program now has not only been working with 7th graders, but with the help of Rochester, New York, who wanted to apply my program to high schoolers, I revised the program for also high schoolers. So some of these data are from 7th graders, some of them are for 9th graders, and I'll tell you which ones when we get there. What was I about to say? Oh, positive views in school. I've worked with some people at Rutgers that have surveyed all 9th graders. Those are ones who we say beginning high school, and found that at the beginning of the year, they say things like, I know my teachers are going to be interested in me, I know I'm going to be able to confide in a teacher, people in this school are interested in me, I feel like I belong in this school. By the end of 9th grade, typically kids go down in that measure. All kids, the honor kids and the kids who aren't going to pass 9th grade. By the end of this, they become disillusioned. They come to the 9th grade all excited, and by the end of 9th grade, they're saying, no, teachers aren't interested in me. I don't feel like I belong here. I can't confide in a teacher. That's typical. So in our program, the fact that we were able to keep things level, kids did not go down in that measure by the end of 9th grade. We felt like we were really making a positive impact both for the kids and for the teachers, because the teachers were still seen in good light by the kids. Also, fewer discipline referrals if they were in our program. They stayed in school, fewer of them dropped out of school or left school early. And the big impact, I think, for the kids' lives is when I partnered with the probation department. I gave the probation department, in order to protect confidentiality, I gave the probation department a list of kids who were in my program, a list of kids who, except for the coin toss, would have been on my program. And I said, tell me the number of kids in each of these lists, list B and list A, have records in the county court system. And I found that the kids I had worked with were statistically significantly less likely to have records in the county court juvenile system. And boy, if that doesn't change the trajectory of a kid's life, I really felt good about those data. So I'll just finish by showing you what these data look like. And with a caveat, 2 caveats. One is, I don't know if you can see this yellow line, but the yellow line is what grades happened. This happened to be from 6th grade to the end of 8th grade for youth who were identified as vulnerable but lost the coin toss. As you can see, they're going down, down, down to the point where a bunch of these kids had to repeat 8th grade. Their grades were so low. One of the caveats is the kids I was working with, every hour that I could of the week, continued to go down for a year. So you can imagine that my first summer, after putting my heart and soul into this program, I look at the data and there's absolutely no difference between the kids I worked with and the kids I didn't work with. Boy, did I pull in the consultants. I had been tape recording myself. I asked people to listen to the tape recording. What am I doing wrong? Everyone said, according to learning theory, you're doing it right. You just keep doing what you're doing. And sure enough, by the end of 2 years, the youth that I was working with began going back uphill with their grades. Second caveat is they didn't end up as high as they were when I started. And that's typical with this group. And I'll have people in the schools say to me, you've been working with this child for 2 years and their grades are worse than they were 2 years ago. And I'll say, yes, I know from my data that that's the way it works, but you should see what their grades would have been like if I hadn't been working with them. And that's why it's so important that I did this randomly assigned control trial, or I wouldn't know that. These are data from high school kids on attendance. Again, the attendance of the youth I did not work with precipitously went down. The youth I worked with went down somewhat, but not anywhere near as much. Here's the data on whether they feel like teachers support them. As you can see, the main youth went down. The youth we worked with stayed even, and this is from the beginning of 9th grade to the end. Now this is discipline referrals, and these data have been repeated at every single, I think we've done 5 or 6 randomized controlled trials by now. These data show up in every single one. That the youth we work with get in less trouble in school than the ones we're not working with, even after we stop working with them. And this also very important for kids' lives. This was in Rochester, New York. The high school kids, by the beginning of, they've been in high school 2 years. Beginning of the next year, only 2% of the ones I worked with had dropped out of school, whereas 16% of the ones that I didn't work with dropped out of school. And these are the arrest records, which was after 5 years after I started working with them. That fewer of the youth that I worked with had records in the county probation department than the ones that I didn't work with. So I will finish now, hoping I've given you some sense of this program. It's elegantly simple, but it has to be done systematically and powerfully for at least 2 years. But our data show that that can reduce the probability of really serious problems for youth.
We have a question and answer session, so anyone who would like to ask questions of any of the speakers, please feel free to do so.
It's 9th grade, those ages, I'm afraid I'm ignorant of.
Yes, my 7th graders are 12 and 13 years old. And 9th graders are 15 and 14, 15 years old.
You just add 5 to the grade if you have the age, roughly speaking.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Has this program been implemented outside of America? And if it has,